Welcome everyone joining us today on the webinar. My name is Michael Donoghue, Head of Distribution at Waterhouse VC. We're an investor in the suppliers to the global gambling industry. So we're a fund that focuses on tech and service businesses that power the gambling companies behind the scenes, rather than those more consumer-facing brands that take the bets from the punters. For those on the webinar who aren't familiar with our fund, we're not going to talk about the fund specifically too much today, but you can view the previous webinars on the fund and our performance on our YouTube channel and find out more information on our website. Today, though, we're actually going to do something a little bit different, which is go deep on one single portfolio company that we have in the fund and learn about their product and the opportunity they're pursuing and their team and how they plan to grow. And with me today to do that is Brandt Page, who is the CEO and founder of Bitblox Games. Welcome, Brandt.
Thanks, Michael. Lovely to be here.
Really good to have you. A quick bit of housekeeping before we begin. Today's webinar is intended for wholesale investors only. Everything discussed today is general information and should not be taken as investment advice. If anyone listening in live today would like to ask a question, please just click that box in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen that says questions. Type your question in there. Only your first name will be shown. You can upvote other people's questions to bump them to the top of the queue. I will try and sprinkle them in during Brandt's presentation today. And if we don't get to it during the presentation, we'll get to it at the end. And last thing I should mention is that today's webinar will be recorded, so you'll have an opportunity to catch up on it again, or if you have to drop off early, you'll get a link to the recording at some point. Brandt, let's start at the basics. Can you tell us a bit about Bitblox and the product and what the game actually is?
Yes, I would describe Bitblox as effectively we build entertainment around the live price of Bitcoin. Okay, that would be my one sentence summary. We are doing things that really no other suppliers in the industry are actually doing. So fundamentally, we're looking here at Up or Down Turbo, our flagship game. It is literally as simple as, is Bitcoin going higher or lower in the next 20 seconds? So we're looking at a 20-second game where you're betting, then you see if you win or not in the next 20 seconds, and then the next game starts after that. A 20-second, if you like, a 20-second cadence of being on and off in the sense of betting, seeing whether you won or not, and then placing your next bet. But it is literally as simple as that on the side of things.
And do people need to know how crypto works and be interested in Bitcoin to play?
I think everyone has some idea about Bitcoin. Obviously, it's had a lot of publicity. It's very volatile in the sense of things, but you don't need any detailed knowledge of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency per se. Players actually play our games with whatever currency the operator lets them use, whether that be fiat or crypto, basically. So it's like engaging with crypto without having to touch it, I would say.
Sure. So your team's provided a little snippet of gameplay for us to share. Maybe you could just commentate over the top how it actually works.
Yes. So these are our two live games currently. So Up or Down Turbo, 20-second prediction. Okay, here we got the odds there, 1.89, 1.87, that changed dynamically with our feed. I've just had a $10 bet on it going up. I know this moves quite quickly. So now I'm into the game screen. I'm looking for it to be in the green section because I've gone up. So, the price started at 110,236. We just want it to be above that. And my $10 bet will return me the $19.74. And in this round, yes, I won. So I've been paid my $19.74 instantly, basically, on my operator side. So that just is a flavor of how simple that one is to work. 3 in a row. Now we've flipped the 20-second prediction almost into an accumulator type bet where you've got to pick 3 of them correct. You've got 8 combinations now, and you can combine up to 3 of these in a single bet in this game. So you can pick them yourself, or we can pick them at random. And in this case, I've just got in, I've had a $50 bet on 3 combinations. We're in the first 20 seconds here now. I've got both options covered because you can see on the right-hand side there, I've got up and down covered in the first one. So downs come in on the first 20 seconds. So now we're looking at the second window, and I've got both of those options covered as well. So no matter what happens, I'm alive. Now we're into the last one, and I need it to go up if I'm going to win. And thankfully, in this case, it has gone up. So I've won my $91 on that bet. So again, simple sort of accumulator style thing, still very fast paced on that side of things.
Yeah, definitely felt quite fast paced. And I really like that chart on the accumulator game. It keeps you engaged through the game, which is cool.
Yes.
What was the inspiration for these games? Like, where did the idea come from originally?
Look, I think the idea, a lot of successful newer games in the sort of global space have actually emerged from there's a saying we use in the crypto markets called crypto degens and the like. But like in that sort of very hardcore crypto community, there's been a lot of really good ideas come from that. And so a business we're involved in is we're doing something similar to this, which we've effectively, if you like, polished and taken out to the wider markets from where it sat. Even the crash gaming concept, that really started in the crypto universe, not in the sort of bigger gambling market. So that's where it is. There is some other attachments to sort of our foundations as financial markets people, but yeah, fundamentally it's like a fun, fast-paced, crypto-based game that effectively everyone can engage with is the inspiration.
Yeah, okay. And just for my understanding as well, and probably the audience, so your business it's a tech business, right? So Bitblox, and like you and your team build the games and you distribute them through other online casinos. So the casinos are the ones standing the bets. You're just providing the text that makes a really good user experience and then also make sure that the games work for the casinos, but you're not like a consumer-facing brand necessarily.
No, we're not. That's right. It's one of the advantages of our games in that we're a little bit like a sort of sports betting mechanic that lives in the casino section of an operator. But actually, that's one of our biggest strengths, because what we have seen since we've been live is that we have a very strong pull for bettors that don't usually come to the casino. So people that tend to just stick to sports betting are actually attracted to our games. And that is a big opportunity for operators in cross-selling into other things. So yeah, I think it's an important aspect to think about that side of things as well.
Yeah, sure. And I know that slots are generally one of the more popular games within the online casino space. Like I think the lion's share, at least as I understand it, goes into the slots turnover when you're thinking about all the money that flows through the online casinos. And that's obviously pretty good for the operators, right? Because it's like a mathematical certainty over a large enough sample size. If you get some sort of turnover through those games, they know what they're going to win. How do the operators think about it when they're plugging in your game and people are playing it?
I think they think probably in two ways. Yes. So, for anyone that's not really into these markets, slots, everyone knows slot, particularly if you're Australian background, you've seen them in RSLs and other things like that. Slot games run off mathematical models based on what we call an RNG, or a random number generator. So effectively a player, unless they hit an enormous jackpot, which is very unlikely, a player cannot actually win by playing a slot game over the long term. It's mathematically impossible. That's why it's very attractive for operators, because it does give them a guaranteed revenue stream over time. As I said, setting aside those sort of jackpot side of things, and also operators do have to spend a lot of money on bonuses and other things to attract players there. We are not RNG. So that's where we are very different. And that's why I talked about the sports betting mechanic before. We're effectively providing a live odds feed for operators, where, as you said before, the operator is standing the bets. And so from a player perspective, they are looking at it like, actually, maybe I can win with this thing because it's a live price. I can see these odds. It's not that dissimilar if I'm betting on a football match or something like that. So I think that's a big attraction for players in particular. And as I said before, we do have this sweet spot with being able to appeal to both casino players and sports players. And look, we've actually seen that with some of our core partners where, placement, because we've created almost this new vertical, placement can sometimes be difficult. So we actually get sometimes operators just putting our games on the front page because that's the easiest place for them, rather than putting them somewhere in the sports area, somewhere in the casino area, and that side of things. Yeah. But look, as you said before, slots still dominate, but the industry is very keen, probably not the right word that I'm missing, but the industry is very keen to develop different types of games. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we've seen such good practice.
Yeah, okay. So there's not a mathematically set in stone return to the casinos. It's more like you've built in margin on each side of the market, and they have maybe an expectation about roughly what they might earn. Is that right?
That's
like
right. So
percentage terms?
Yeah, look, if I talk about this, like we call it an overround in the betting markets, but which is how any sort of bookmaker frames a sports bet or a horse racing bet. So our overround, if everything was bet to expectations, would deliver operators in the region of 7 to 15, 16%, depending on the game, basically. So that's what we're aiming for there. But we are also about to introduce a new deal where if operators don't want to stand the bets, we have a risk management partner that will basically offer that function where we guarantee a sort of a lower GGR number, but the operator doesn't then have to worry about looking after bets from their side as well. So we're trying to cater for both sets of operators, particularly those that run casino-only businesses might not be as familiar with how you manage, if you like, a sports betting concept.
No, that makes sense. This game sort of straddles financial markets, like you've got the Bitcoin price, and it also straddles betting. And those are two areas where people flock to make money and game the system and try to figure out ways to win. So how would someone theoretically try and beat this game? And then what are you doing to protect against that for the operators?
That's a good question. I think like most suppliers, we are all about fair play. We want people to come, enjoy and play our content like as much as they want. But the reality is there is always a small portion of people out there that will look to exploit or to cheat in any number of ways. It happens across everything from slot bonus structures and other things like that to bonuses on deposits and things like that. The reality is, while it is very difficult to manipulate the Bitcoin price, because as people know, moves around an awful lot, particularly even in 20-second windows. So the reality of trying to effectively influence a 20-second window, a lot of variables have to be in the right order for that to potentially be effective. It is technically possible that someone, if they were willing to risk enough Bitcoin on, say, an exchange like Binance, that it might be possible. But on the flip side of that, we actually have a very robust and automated system of detecting if we see anything like that. And we've been live for just on a year now, and we've seen it on probably 2 or 3 occasions where there has been an attempt to do that. And what we do in those cases is we detect that very early and we work with the operator to rectify what it might be. So if it means that we need to void around because we have suspicion that something has happened, if you like, with the Bitcoin price that shouldn't have, then we can do that. So we have mechanisms to protect on that side of things. But yeah, like anything, people are always looking for ways around either games or other things.
Sure. And I guess operators can set their own natural restrictions around if they have a betting limit on that game, because then they have to weigh up what they can theoretically win off one round versus how much they would have to risk in the Bitcoin market to move the price. And Bitcoin's obviously quite a large market now, so you'd need significant funds.
For operators that are also running sports books, it's more something they're familiar with. For operators that don't and they're just casino, it's less so. And that's partly why we've been working very hard to get in place a sort of commercial structure where we could have a deal for operators where they don't have to worry about standing bets, and then they still receive similar returns to what they get on an RNG game as well.
Yeah, okay. And probably a related question has just come through. How do you handle extreme price movements when the price moves up or down continuously for some time? So maybe not necessarily gaming, just like natural volatility in the Bitcoin market. Is there anything to worry about there for operators?
There's not anything not to worry about specifically. What this goes to too is like the Bitcoin price that we use as our starting and closing price that you see and you saw on that demo is actually an on-chain oracle. So it comes from a project called the Pith Network. It's for anyone that wants to look into it. But you can actually go and see on-chain the price that we've used for the open and close and confirm that they're the correct prices. And one of the benefits of that is they take information from, I think, more than 30 publishers. So it's not one exchange or one trading house or otherwise. There's a bunch of different publishers that make up that information. So the Pith Oracle will never be the same price as Binance or any of the other exchanges or otherwise. It should be close, but it won't necessarily be exact for that. But part of the fact that Bitcoin is so volatile, I think, is the attraction. The biggest movement I've ever seen in a 20-second game was of the order of $300, because we were actually at a conference promoting it and we were doing a free demo where people were basically picking up or down for a 20-second window, and whoever got the biggest movement in that window won. And I remember this person that they got the $300 movement. So for the rest of the day, almost nobody had a chance to, because it was such a huge movement at that time. But that's where it also goes to our pricing model is a machine learning model we've been running for more than 5 years. So that's where it does cater for those sort of big movements in Bitcoin. And we see Bitcoin moving around a lot.
Sure. So just to dive in there, I don't want to get too far in the weed, but you're saying, so if there's significant momentum for the price, say, going down, that means for the next move, the odds have shortened on down.
You might see there's significant movement in one direction over a prolonged period of time. And look, even when Bitcoin is moving up or down, it doesn't move in a linear fashion. It doesn't just always go up when we're looking at 20-second windows. But you might see, like if you're looking at our prices, you might look at, oh, hang on, this round, it's at the moment it's showing, if it's going down, it might say, oh, down's only like 1.4 and up is 2.7. And so like for those people that depends, if you're attracted to the favorite, maybe you still bet the favorite because it's all going down, but other people might go, hang on, 2.7 is pretty good odds here in the sense of even though it's been going down. So yeah, it's not a coin flip per se in the sense of true odds in that. And I think that fact, the live odds is quite an attractive thing because it's never the same odds that you're betting on any contest. You're always seeing those odds and they're always moving around, but you get the odds that you lock in at the time. That's the simple fact.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's the product. So let's move on to, I guess, the wider market context. I was looking at some numbers from a data provider called Tanzanite, and that's someone who looks and tracks the deposits at the major crypto casinos, which I guess is your sort of main target audience. And it looks like there was 25 US billion deposited in the last 12 months with the top 10 crypto casinos. So that's just one sort of snapshot of the market, and it's obviously massive. How does Bitblox break in? What's the market gap that you're trying to solve for, and how do you take a bit of that share?
I think, look, I could sit here and talk about any sorts of numbers about our total addressable market and all that sort of stuff. And look, the simple fact is the number, if we're looking at our space, even if you just put us into sort of casino games area across the market, and that's across like grey to regulated markets, it's at least a minimum of $10 to $15 billion a year in the sense of things as to what pool size is here. And you can see why operators are clambering for new content because just they're putting out reskinned slots all the time. We see there's probably 50,000 or more slot games out. We are seeing, we talk about cultural moment on the screen here, we are seeing the younger generation, they understand crypto and they're very au fait with, even with Web3 stuff, with how that works. And they're looking for very short-term solutions, and they're not necessarily as attractive to slots as what probably my generation might have been in the sense of things. Because once upon a time, slots only existed effectively as a land-based thing. And the reason why they're so popular online is just because they were so popular in a land-based environment. And I think that's the sort of thing that we are addressing in that side of things. It is fresh. It's something very different. And yes, look, on a model perspective here, operators are not having to give away huge percentages in bonuses to attract people to our games, which is, I think, a very strong endorsement, attraction and conversion.
And is the fact that it's not entirely random, you think, a bit of a selling point as well? I feel like there's some people who wouldn't ever play slots because of that random aspect, and they might actually play with sports betting. And I can see how those sorts of people would have appeal for this game.
I think that just goes to why we are seeing people that sometimes only bet on sports and not play casino games. That's why we're seeing them attracted to our games, because they're going, oh, this is a bit like sports betting, and I can win. And you want people to feel and think like that when they're playing. You want them to be able to, even for them to going on some streaks in the sense of things and getting that sort of that feeling. That is the case. It is not an RNG. It is a genuine combination of skill and chance.
Let's say you crack the market. What's stopping someone from copying what Bitblox is doing? What's your competitive advantage?
I'd always be flattered, and we've even seen like some aspects of the industry and some free to play and other things popping up around Bitcoin prediction as people have seen us. Obviously, one of our strengths is clearly the pricing model in the sense of things like that. It's very important. If you had someone that just popped up a 1.9 price on every game, I don't think you'd see them around too long in that sense of things. So I think that aspect is quite important. But then the flip side, what we talked about before with manipulation otherwise, if you don't understand what needs to happen there, you could get yourself in trouble quite quickly.
You've been around for about 12 months now, or at least live for 12 months. Can you tell us a bit about the traction you've got today? Who are some of the clients and how they're actually going operationally?
Yeah, I think this is the most powerful thing, because I think we are a very small team, and on limited budget to date, we've done quite an unbelievable job of getting to where we are and getting live and getting on quite a number of operators already in the sense of our games and our content. And I think that's a testament to how strong we are technically, both on the integration side and how strong we are in relationships with the product generally. I don't want to talk and jinx myself here, but we've been running now for just over 12 months. And I think we probably only had 2 instances where we've had an issue with either the game going down or something happening that we've had to basically do something to correct it. Which is pretty good for a new supplier. It's probably pretty good even for an established supplier and that sort of thing. We've got the 2 live games that you saw at the moment. We have a multitude of languages and currencies that are supported. We're live on more than 50 operators at the moment. You can see there, like, probably our biggest supporters to date has been the aggregator Hub88 and some of their bigger operators like sportsbet.io, whale.io, Big Casino. We've had some really good traction on that side of things. And look, with some of these stats here, looking at session durations of sort of 6 minutes plus, those sort of numbers are sometimes the length that someone stays on an entire website, gambling website, not just playing one game. So if someone's on for 6 minutes, they're playing at least, if they're playing up or down turbo, they're playing 10 games at least in a row. Obviously, as I said before, we've delivered 7% on average GGR on the up or down turbo game to date. And it's the same as 40 bets plus per player on average. Another thing we get is when someone actually lands on the game, pretty much it's like between a sort of 40 and 50% conversion rate to actually playing it for real money, which is also pretty high for that side of things. But then just on top level stuff, I think we're approaching 20,000 unique players now. We're well over the 500,000 bets, individual bets. And we're also well through the $5 million wager now as well. So I think the point here is, like, we have proven market fit. Now it's about how do we expand and go to the next level from where we are now. We've got to market. We've got the first couple of games that work and have proven themselves, but there's an awful lot more we can do to grow in this space.
I really want to talk about those expansion plans in a second, but I just want to zoom in on one thing on this slide, which is that 7% GGR number. Can you just maybe talk a bit more in depth about what that actually means? If someone loses $100 playing this game, how does that flow down through the ecosystem to Bitblox?
So for anyone like gambling origin, GGR is gross gambling revenue. So it is basically what the operator makes after paying out whatever they need to pay out. So it was a sports betting game, like I take X amount of dollars in bets in and I pay them out Y, and the difference between X and Y is my GGR. So in the case of our game, what we're saying is if there's $100 worth of bets, basically we're delivering the operator $7 worth of profit. So for every $100 worth of bets, they're paying out $93 and then they're keeping $7. And then we get then as Bitblox as a supply, we get a percentage of that $7. That's how the sort of commercials work on that side.
So do you charge any other fees to the operators, or is it just that cut of GGR?
Not yet, but as we grow and otherwise, there is the possibility for setup fees and monthly fees, depending on the operator and their size and things like that. But as when I talked before about potentially the new arrangement where we could offer certain operators guaranteed returns, that will also provide a new revenue stream for us as well. And then some of the things we have in plan around boosting demand and things like that also provide another separated source of revenue for us.
Understood. Let's talk about those expansion plans that you mentioned. So what's next for Bitblox, and how are you going to get to that next leg of growth?
So I think the first two on this slide are the most important. This is about distribution. Okay, we do obviously need to maximize our current deals and obviously expand our distribution into more operators and more aggregators. And as I said, we've got a very proven team in relation to being able to execute integrations very quickly on the side of things on that, which not a lot of suppliers can actually do. And so that goes to things like, even come back to the relationship side of things. While you might have a big aggregator with lots of operators underneath them, and those operators turn your content on, that's just one part of the process. The next part is making sure that you have prominence of your game on their website, so the players see you and you're not hidden at the back of the lobby somewhere. And there are people in all of those online casinos that manage that and run that. And so there's lots of different things you can do, both in relation to discounts on revenue share stuff, promotional tools like free bets and tournaments. So yeah, a lot of what we're trying to do here in this sort of next stage for us is basically to bring some more resources in to execute on those 2 points. Basically, they're the two main ones. I would say for now, it is a distribution game on it.
Understood. So to date, you've been largely self-funded with you and the team and maybe a small group of investors, but now you're going out and raising $1 million for that next leg. And would it be fair to say a lot of that is actually going into that sales function?
I'd say a decent amount of it. Basically, it's split basically across if you like, that distribution function. And then we also need to bring in some additional resources around game tech in the sense of that sort of things. And then we also need some production and content partnerships as well. So it's the last bit there that I would say is also as important. You cannot in this industry just create one or two, even if they're really good games, you can't just create one or two games and rest on your laurels. You need to be putting out new content at a very regular interval. And we have an aim of getting to the point where we can produce or release a new game every month. And then on that side of things, like we've already got quite a suite of new ideas in R&D. And in saying that, I didn't cover before, one of the beauties about our up or down game, if you can see that, look, the up or down engine also powers 3 in a row. We've just turned it into a accumulator. So what I would say there's the reskinability, if that's a word, of our engine is very powerful. Like we can make things look very different to up or down turbo, even though they're the same engine. Whereas we're reskinning a slot game, it's much more difficult. You can put different artwork and other things like that and make it a different theme from Egypt to China or to whatever, but fundamentally it looks the same. We can make things look very different, even though they're the same. So that's one thing. And then the point about boosting demand and micro apps there is like, there's a whole array of things, thinking about AI and other things now where you can automate chatbots that are putting out information on social media. Have you seen Bitcoin's up $1,000 today? Go here and have a look at this free game and play it for it. And we can create tournaments where people play for free and then send them off to operators where they play for real money. And that could be a very powerful revenue source for us as well in the future. So yeah, this is about just basically adding, because we're not aiming to build a team of 100 people here tomorrow. This is just adding to the very good set of resources that I've already got so that we can push into the next level of expansion and then see where we can get to. But I think we have a real opportunity here for where we're sitting to expand in a big way in the next 12 months.
We've got a distribution question that has come through from Mitch, who has asked, are there any particular geographies that Bitblox is targeting for expansion? And if so, why those?
I think it's a good question. And I do get asked about locations at the time. At the moment, for the operators that we're on, and that's not a spectrum of the entire world, we have seen very strong traction in Asia, which is maybe not unexpected because culturally out there, they are looking for things that they're looking for games that they can win on, not necessarily slots and things like that. We'd had some very good traction in Brazil as well on the side of things, where slots are not as popular in that Latin American market as other places. So I think, and we haven't gone live yet, but we've got 3 really strong commercial deals in Africa that we're closing at the moment as well. And Africa, like I think crypto in Africa is gone crazy in the sense of interest or otherwise. So I think those sort of jurisdictions, I know they're big to start with, would be logical, but then over time, I still want to get back to, at the moment, we can't really go into the UK or the US. There's potentially a really strong opportunity in Australia, given that Australia bans online casinos, but it's because they're banning games of chance. So because we are a skill-based game, we may have an opportunity to actually get into the Australian market, which would be a huge thing for us when you look at the limited competition that's in that domestic market. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, I think it does. And we had a pretty related question from Amir. Maybe you don't have anything to add, but just in case you do, which Southeast Asian markets does Bitblox see as more open to crypto-enabled iGaming? And how is it positioning to navigate local payment norms and compliance?
That's a very complicated one. I'm probably getting down to mini jurisdictions. I'm probably not an expert, particularly on the sort of like local payment norms. I've had someone raise the blue peso issue in Argentina with me before in the sense of things. I think the reality
is it not the responsibility of the operator, like your customer then has to figure out how to take payments?
It is definitely the responsibility of the operator as to that side of things. But obviously, depending on what currency operators are letting players use, we're always trying to fit in with what they're doing in the sense of things. So if someone is offering certain, so it's just, yeah, I think we try to accommodate where we can. As you can see, I think on that prior slide, I think we already support more than 50 currencies as it stands at the moment. It's very hard to predict where crypto is going to go from both a regulatory and other front. What we're trying to sit on here is back to the fundamental is like, this is about engaging with crypto without having to touch it. It's not about nobody's buying Bitcoin or anything like that. It's just letting people engage with it in a simple manner.
Understood. And then the last part of that question was around the compliance. And there was also another question in here from Simon. From a legal licensing compliance point of view, does this sit under sports betting, casino, or FX?
It's definitely not FX. Most people, you could get a different answer depending on who, but it definitely falls to gambling in the sense of that side of things. And as I said, I think it's depending on, like, there are only certain jurisdictions that might have distinctions between how they regulate sports betting, casino, or otherwise. But I think we've seen, as I said, we've already seen this challenge where we've had operators that have actually put us in their sports betting lobby as well as their casino lobby. It's pretty hard for me to sit here and say we're definitively one or the other. I think we can fit both boxes depending on what one is the one that an operator needs.
Understood. And you've got a gaming license though, as a company, Bitblox does. And then you have to also just make sure that your customers are offering that product in a jurisdiction where they're allowed to offer it, right?
Yeah, we have a list of restricted jurisdictions that every operator has to stick to. So like any supplier, all suppliers have restricted jurisdictions depending on where they're sitting or otherwise.
We've got a question here from Christopher who said, does the operator retain complete ownership of all the customer, including all the data?
Yes. We don't know. We don't have any visibility to the customers on our side.
Yeah, makes sense. I think we've answered this one, but just to make it super clear, Mark has asked, is the plan to license to casinos like stake.com or run your own venue?
No, we're very much focused on being a pure B2B company. We're not intending to create our own B2C brand or otherwise on that front. We don't want to compete with our customers on that side. We're very happy to stay as a B2B business. I think where I touched on where we might do slight B2C stuff is when I talked about the creation of those free-to-play tournaments and things like that. So that is technically B2C, but it's not us running a real money website, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've got a few more questions in here. If there's any more questions from the audience, please pop them in the question box. Mark has also asked, can leveraged markets push spot price in terms of low liquidity, in times of low liquidity? This is a common market making strategy. So I guess this is more to the point of just making sure things don't get out of whack and people are beating the game in times of low liquidity.
That is exactly what I was alluding to before when I was talking about conditions needing to be very much of a certain way. And one of the things we're looking at that very point, which is, I'm glad that was raised, is we don't have it yet, but we will basically at a point introduce dynamic bet maximums. So a bit like the difference between betting on the Premier League or betting on the Vanarama South League. For those that are not in Britain, I apologize for that reference. But so at times where Bitcoin there's lots of activity otherwise, we can allow our bet maximums to be higher. But at times where it's very quiet and there may be an opportunity for someone to look at that, we can lower the bet maximum. So that's one of the innovations that we're actually going to be putting out soon. But that's exactly where I was talking about people attempting to manipulate. That's exactly the sort of scenario I was talking about before.
That makes sense. What question I was actually thinking when I was reading about Polymarket and these prediction market platforms like Polymarket and Kalshi, which are the two big ones, there's a lot of markets actually popping up on there around crypto pricing. So there's already of this emergent behavior around people wanting to predict where these crypto prices go. Does that come up in your sales conversation? Is that helpful for momentum, the fact that this is being validated elsewhere?
There is a growing buzz in the market that prediction markets will be the next big thing in the gambling world. And I would say that we are very well positioned to capitalize on that because we are already there, we are already doing it, and we've already had success in that side of it. So I'd be very happy if that proves to be correct on that side of things. I really do think that it's a huge opportunity.
Oscar has asked who handles the Bitblox integrations and how quick is the process?
So it's one of two ways. The way integrations work, we call them either a direct integration or a reverse integration. The reverse just means my team does the lion's share of the work. And so for aggregators, where we're integrating to a platform that gives us access to many operators, we tend to do a reverse integration. Where we're doing a deal with a single operator, we tend to do a direct integration where their team uses our documentation to do it. But this is all based around APIs, okay? And we are basically, not me, I'm not, but my team is basically API experts.
The last question we've got through is from Mark. Do you see convergence of crypto, iGaming, prediction, CFD, and traditional markets? It feels like it's all going in one direction and no one single venue has realized and brought it all together.
I think that's a very prescient question. I think he's right. I don't know exactly how quickly it will happen. And I think this comes to like, how quickly does prediction crash into sports betting and casino stuff? There's some sort of evangelists of this would say we're going to come to a time where there's a market on everything. Literally, you want to get something priced up, no matter how crazy it is, you'll be able to do it. So I do see potentially financial markets and gambling markets coming closer and closer together. I think at the moment that you've got very different regulatory regimes across both, and I can't really imagine the ceding sovereignty, if that's the right word, probably not. But so I think it might be regulatory stuff that makes that more difficult. But yeah, logically, there should be a one-stop shop for doing all of this stuff.
I think we'll leave it there, Brandt. Thanks so much for your time and telling us about Bitblox today. I found it really interesting, and I think we made good time getting through all those questions. I will just say that Bitblox is currently going through the fundraising process, and I noticed a lot of investors on the call today. So if those people are interested in learning a bit more, feel free to contact. My emails and number is on the screen there, and I'll pass you on to Brandt to discuss further. Right, yeah, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Brandt.
Excellent. Thanks for the opportunity.